Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be diving into some of the top news stories. We've got a lot to unpack, from politics and finance to tech and some of those global events that just make you scratch your head.
You're not kidding. I took a look at our sources this morning: MarketWatch, CNBC, Investing.com, Motley Fool UK, Seeking Alpha, Alpha Street, and even Raging Bull, and this is going to be one wild ride.
So buckle up and get ready to go deep. We're going to try to understand the why behind these crazy headlines and what they mean for you.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Well, how about the political arena? Seems like we've taken a step back in time.
Oh, yeah. Trump is back in the White House. And his first week back has been, well, eventful, to say the least.
He definitely hasn't been wasting any time, especially with those policy shifts.
Right, healthcare and finance especially. I'm interested to see how some of these seemingly unconnected decisions end up, well, connecting.
For sure. Like, on the one hand, MarketWatch is reporting that he's rolled back those drug cost reductions for Medicare and Medicaid recipients.
Yeah, that's got to impact a lot of people who rely on those programs.
Definitely. But then on the other hand, CNBC is reporting that the crypto industry is seeing huge returns already after donating heavily to Trump's campaign.
So those donations paid off, huh? Makes you wonder if those two things are connected.
Maybe, but who knows? I mean, reducing healthcare costs for some, taking actions that benefit an industry that's supporting him financially, it just makes you go, what do you think? Coincidence or something else at play here?
It's way too early to tell, but yeah, it definitely raises questions about priorities.
And about potential conflicts of interest too, right?
For sure.
Speaking of priorities, the cabinet picks are getting attention too.
Absolutely.
CNBC's reporting that Pete Hegseth was confirmed as defense secretary, despite, those concerns about his past. And it looks like Kristi Noem is on track to be confirmed as Homeland Security Secretary. What kind of message do you think these appointments send?
It's tough to say for sure. I mean, they're both pretty controversial choices, right? It does suggest a focus on security and a very specific type of conservatism.
I think Hegseth's appointment, especially given his history, will lead to some serious debate about the administration's stance on military intervention and their overall foreign policy. It'll be really interesting to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, both on the domestic front and, of course, on that international stage.
And speaking of international affairs, Seeking Alpha is reporting about that rather tense phone call that happened.
Yeah.
Between Trump and the Danish Prime Minister.
Oh, yeah, that was about Greenland, right?
Yep, Greenland.
Greenland. That's interesting. Where did that come from?
Well, it looks like Trump has been interested in acquiring Greenland, like actually acquiring Greenland, for a while now, and this call suggests that interest hasn't faded. And then we have that other announcement, too.
What announcement?
CNBC is reporting that the State Department has frozen almost all U.S. aid programs.
Oh, wow. All of them?
Almost all. The only exceptions are emergency food aid and aid to Israel and Egypt.
That's a pretty big deal.
Isn't it? Makes you wonder what their plan is. I mean, if they're not sending aid all over the world, that frees up a lot of resources for them to do other things.
It could be a way to push that America First agenda.
Yeah. And the timing is, well, interesting. Investing.com is reporting that Hamas is going to be releasing those 4 Israeli soldier hostages.
They are? Wow.
In exchange for 200 Palestinian prisoners.
Wow. That's a really delicate situation. I mean, that could really impact things over there.
I think so, too. The peace in that region is already so fragile. This just adds another layer to an already very complicated situation.
Definitely. And the U.S. aid freeze, well, that could complicate things even more, couldn't it?
Yeah, I think it could. It could even be seen as, maybe the U.S. is trying to put pressure on one side or the other. But who knows? Maybe it's all just a big coincidence.
I don't know about that. It's hard to say.
True. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. I'll be watching this one closely. All right, so where were we?
We were talking about the market's future. Some experts think there's a bull market coming, and others are worried about, a bubble.
Right. And MarketWatch was reporting on Ed Yardeni's prediction that the S&P could hit 7,000 this year, all thanks to those retiring baby boomers.
With all their savings going into the market. But then MarketWatch also mentioned that worry about a bubble, particularly since those elites at Davos don't seem too phased. It's a tough one. Do you buy into Yardeni's optimism?
It's a balancing act, right? Acknowledging the risks while also recognizing the opportunities for growth.
CNBC mentioned Goldman Sachs's picks, the stocks they're saying are must-buys before earnings season.
Oh, yeah, those table-pounding buys.
But then CNBC also reported on overbought stocks. So are we heading for a correction? It's hard to know what to think.
That's why it's always best to make informed decisions. Really think about your own finances, your goals, and how much risk you're willing to take. Blindly following advice, yeah, not a good idea.
Definitely not. We were talking about those market watch readers, remember? The ones who were trying to figure out Social Security and retirement planning.
Yeah, those are really common problems, you know? Like that one reader who's still working, they got denied early Social Security benefits, right? It's a complicated system.
Yeah.
And then that other reader, she's worried because her ex-husband is sick but won't retire.
Spousal benefits are so tricky.
Mm.
At least MarketWatch gave some advice on that kind of stuff. Like they had tips on how to lower your taxable income if you've got high RMDs.
Right. Required minimum distributions. Those are those minimum amounts you have to take out of your retirement accounts each year after you reach a certain age.
Exactly. And MarketWatch also addressed giving money to family.
Which can be tricky for lots of different reasons, not just financial.
For sure. And, all this advice is pretty timely. I mean, CNBC reported on Trump's proposal, right?
To eliminate taxes on tips.
Yeah, exactly.
Which would be huge for people working in service industries, especially in a city like Las Vegas.
No kidding. It just shows that even what seems like a small change can have such a big impact on people's everyday lives, not just the overall economy.
It really does.
So, moving away from personal finance, CNBC is reporting on something pretty alarming. Those aerial firefighting companies.
What about them?
They're struggling to keep up. There's just too much demand.
Wildfires are getting worse, aren't they? It's a scary thought.
It is. And it's only going to get worse as climate change continues to make things hotter and drier. We need to think about investing more and getting prepared because this problem's not going away.
I totally agree. We can't just ignore it and hope it goes away.
Speaking of things that aren't going away, CNBC reported on some contrasting approaches in the corporate world. Remember those Costco shareholders?
The ones who didn't want to review their diversity programs?
Yeah, that's them.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've got companies like Target who are actually rolling back some of their DEI initiatives.
Well, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, is it?
Not at all. It seems like companies are just trying to figure things out, balancing their own goals with what's happening out there in the world.
CNBC was saying that DEI was a big topic at Davos.
Yeah, publicly and privately. So this is a conversation that's happening everywhere.
Which is a good thing, right? DEI is about more than just checking boxes. It's about creating a workplace that's fair and welcoming to everybody. And ultimately, that benefits everyone.
And speaking of workplaces, that Damon John from Shark Tank, he's in the news too.
He is. What for?
He's supporting this idea of loud quitting.
Loud quitting. What's that?
It's when people, speak up about toxic work environments. They refuse to just put up with it.
Interesting. So it's like a power shift. Employees are starting to realize that they deserve better.
Yeah, exactly. And companies are starting to realize that they have to change or they're going to lose good employees.
Makes sense. If you create a positive work environment, people are going to want to stay, right?
Definitely. So CNBC covered a few other interesting things too. Cameron Diaz, she's back in Hollywood after 10 years.
Oh, wow, really? I wonder what she'll be in.
And then there was this American who lives in Germany. They were talking about how great the European social system is.
It's always interesting to hear how other countries do things, right?
Makes you think. So before we wrap up, there are a couple more developments I want to mention. CNBC reported that Trump recommended shutting down FEMA.
He did, before his visit to those California fire sites.
Yeah.
Wow. Talk about a bold move.
It's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
I think he might be planning some major changes to how we handle disaster relief. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out.
Definitely. We've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we?
We really have. From personal finance to corporate culture and everything in between.
It's a lot to take in, but it's important to stay informed, right?
It is. It helps us understand how all these different parts of the world are connected.
And how they impact each other.
Exactly. We'll be right back with some final thoughts in just a few minutes. And we're back. We've talked about a lot today, but there's something that's been, it feels like a recurring theme.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It seems like power dynamics are shifting everywhere, don't they?
In politics especially. I mean, Trump is back in the White House and, we talked about those policy changes, right?
Those healthcare and finance decisions.
Yeah. Like rolling back drug costs, but then also supporting crypto. Whose interests is he really looking out for? It's hard to say.
It does seem contradictory, right? But maybe there's a bigger picture here, some strategy that we're just not seeing yet.
Maybe. Or maybe he's just trying to appeal to certain groups.
Could be. But it's worth thinking about the long-term consequences of these decisions, right? How will they affect things down the road?
And it's not just domestic politics either. The global landscape is changing, too. I mean, Trump's interest in Greenland, the fact that the U.S. is freezing aid, that hostage exchange in the Middle East.
It's a lot to keep track of. And all these things, they're connected, aren't they?
They are. What happens in one part of the world, it affects other parts, too.
Exactly. And then you've got the tech world, too. Remember that CNBC report about China?
Their DeepSeek AI model.
Yeah, that one. It's pretty impressive. Getting those kinds of results with less powerful, cheaper chips. I think it was a wake-up call for the U.S.
I think so, too. And I think Trump's Stargate project is a direct response to that. But is it going to be enough to catch up?
Good question. And it's not just about technology either. It's about, who has the most influence, who gets to shape the future.
The stakes are pretty high. And then you've got what's happening in the workplace, too.
People are speaking up more. They're demanding better treatment.
Yeah, like Damon John and his support for loud quitting. I think that's a sign that employees are fed up.
They're realizing they deserve better.
And companies are realizing they have to adapt or they're going to lose good people.
It's a positive change, right?
It is. It's about creating workplaces that are actually good for people. So we've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? Trump, the markets, AI, even what's happening at our jobs.
We have. It can feel overwhelming, but the important thing is to stay informed, right? And to stay curious. The world's always changing.
It is, and we're all part of that change. We encourage you to keep thinking about these things, keep asking questions, and most importantly, don't be afraid to speak up.
Yeah.
Make your voice heard.
Absolutely. Your voice matters. Use it to advocate for change, for a better future.
That's what it's all about. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.